Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. This is Olivia and Balu. Today, we're going to talk about AP efficiency and how to streamline your invoice processing.
Hello, everyone. Here's the agenda for today's webinar: an introduction to the topic of AP efficiency, the relevant key performance indicators, what data we measured for the analysis, the prevalent types of AP processing, the results of our analysis, ways to improve your efficiency, and a quick question and answer session.
Great. So here are the fundamental steps in accounts payable. It's important to understand each step and how they affect your department, especially when planning improvements to your AP process. So the steps are invoice receipt and sorting, data extraction, PO matching, verification of vendor details, invoice approval, invoice payment, and auditing and reporting. So during this webinar, we're going to focus on the data extraction step in the process.
To determine what improvements need to be made to your AP processes and how to make these improvements, you'll need to measure specific KPIs. First, look at your invoice data capture method. Examine steps that require paper or manual data processing, as they're error-prone and take the most time and resources to complete. Chances are there's at least some manual work involved. 58% of invoices that are still being entered manually into AP systems in a typical enterprise. The KPIs we're looking at are the number of keystrokes per minute, which is how many taps of the keyboard does it take to successfully capture data from an invoice. The FTE load, which is the effort that one employee, as if he or she were working full-time, would have on the data entry tasks. For example, if 9 employees each work on data entry 1/3 of the time, you would have a data entry FTE load of 3. The invoice exception rate, which is data inaccuracies, omissions, and inconsistencies, which are just a few of the many causes of invoice exceptions, which can slow or shut down your AP process. Then comes the average invoice processing time. The longer it takes for your AP team to process invoices, the more cost your department and company will incur. Total cost of ownership. Using a model that is based on a real use case, we calculated that the TCO of manual, template-based, and cognitive data capture methods. This can fluctuate wildly depending on the TCO methodology used. Invoice per month per employee. Our aforementioned model also calculated the average number of invoices one employee processes per month. Days sales outstanding, or DSO. The number of days it takes you to pay a supplier after receiving their invoice is another specific important metric. No vendor wants to be kept waiting too long for payment, especially after they've honored their end of the service agreement. Also, you stand to lose early payment discounts in this case. We are very interested in understanding what other KPIs you use to measure your AP processes. Please write to us and we'll discuss this further during the Q&A.
Okay, so what happens if your AP process is not optimized? Here are some of the issues you may be faced with. Late or lost invoices. This means you could miss out on early payment discounts or face fees and penalties. Also, incorrectly entered data, invoices without the required PO number, and difficulties retrieving invoice data for reporting. There's also a potential for time wastage and errors throughout the entire AP process. So if you're faced with these issues, it can take several days for one or more employees to resolve them. It can also hinder other employees, other departments, and even end customers.
Here's how we measured the data. Technical discussions with our clients regarding their AP workflows before implementing Rossum. And secondly, a history of long and rich experiences with our partners. On the table to your right, a quick indicator of how you can break the wages down. The head of AP and managers, we've listed this as $48,000. What we should keep in mind is also the fully loaded cost, which is $96,000. And operators with an average wage of $24,000, or the fully loaded cost, which is $48,000. Here, the fully loaded costs include hiring and training costs, computer and office overheads, managerial costs that stem from the company structure, and so on.
Okay, so now we want to look at what this TCO consists of. It's direct costs, indirect costs, and hidden costs. The direct costs include these fully loaded ones just mentioned by Balu, the hiring and training costs of the employees in the AP department. And ultimately, we want to calculate the keystrokes, which shows how efficient the employee will be. The indirect costs, on the other hand, stem from additional effort associated with the process in case anything goes awry. So the employees will need to problem solve. This includes identifying and correcting data entry errors or other associated issues, such as duplicate payments, for example. Then there are hidden costs. These are intangible costs, which pretty much make up everything else. They include penalties for late payments, loss of bonus for early payments, cash flow issues, vendor issue escalations, vendor rotation due to poor communication, employee rotation due to an inefficient process, etc. Goes on forever.
In the year 2017, 90% of documents were being processed manually. Today, fewer documents are being processed manually, but that is still too many. The manual process is certainly heavy on human effort, totaling 105 keystrokes per invoice. That's simply 15 fields times 7 keystrokes per field. Now this works out to 6 characters on average, plus 1 keystroke to confirm and move to the next data field. At an average of 78 keystrokes per minute, an invoice is completed in 81 seconds, again an average. However, a manual process means that every invoice must be handled manually as a whole, rather than being presented automatically by a system, either in its physical form or opened and arranged on the screen if scanned. This easily takes an additional 30 seconds per invoice in practice, making this total 111 seconds. This makes the actual speed 32 invoices per hour. Then comes the indirect load. We will rely on the 12.5% rework rate figure from above. For 30,000 invoices per month, this means 3,750 invoices that are reworked, taking over 5.55 minutes each. With direct and hidden costs taken together, the total cost works out to $730,675 per year for 360,000 invoices. This results in a cost per invoice of $2.03.
Great. So the next type of processing is a template-based on-premise solution. In this case, we estimated the ratio of invoices is 30% processed manually and 70% processed using templates. These templates are set up for each vendor with rules to extract necessary data fields from each invoice. Less documents are being processed manually, that's true compared to the previous method, but there's still a lot that's being processed manually. Out of the 70% of templated invoices, there's still manual verification and possible correction that happens, which affects the total time. For the time, we consider the manually extracted data and the manual corrections needed for the data the templates picked up. We also need to consider rework, but this applies only to a portion of the manually corrected documents. The direct effort total is 23 seconds per invoice. For the price, there are some one-time investments. This is the implementation at the beginning and the hardware and software purchase. Every year, a license needs to be purchased, and there are fees for additional pages and updates to vendor templates, as well as maintenance that is ongoing. In the end, the total cost of this setup is $370,333 per year for 360,000 invoices, putting the price per invoice at $1.03.
Full automation of document processing may be attainable on a case-by-case basis, but in this case, let's realistically consider that all invoices still need to be manually validated. The time taken is 18.5 seconds per invoice, including the time for 10% of manually corrected invoices. This works out to a TCO of $160,000, This works out to a TCO of $160,833, which is the total cost per year, which pans out to $0.45 per invoice. You can read more about our calculations in the helpful links at the end of the presentation.
So now we're going to compare the three methods that we just discussed: manual, template-based, and cognitive. Manual is pretty self-explanatory. Everything is done by hand. There's no implementation, and we discussed the cost per invoice and time per invoice. But for template-based, it's important to note that setting up the templates and the initial implementation of the system is quite time-consuming, expensive, and needs to be performed by experts. There's also training that the staff needs to perform the actual data extraction. So this training can take up to half a day. It ranges, but typically it takes a very long time because they need to be fully experts in what they're doing and how they're using these templates. And also retraining is needed in case there's personnel rotation. The system configuration is specific for each vendor and needs regular updates due to natural vendor rotation and change of invoice layouts. Since setting up a template is expensive, it's never done for all of the suppliers. On the other hand, implementing a cognitive solution is simple. The training takes around 15 minutes and you can start extracting from day one. The essential components are the process design and integration with other company systems. You can also read more about these calculations in the helpful links at the end.
Today, moving from a fully manual process to a cognitive data capture service for our model company means a staggering 4.5x reduction of costs for an AP process. The gap between the manual, template-based, and cognitive data capture solutions will only grow further with the increase in the volume of the invoices or any extra complexity in the process, such as line items, vendor address capture, or purchase orders. Even today, staff willing to retype data is increasingly difficult to find.
Okay, so now we want to talk about how you can actually improve your efficiency in your AP department. We recommend implementing an intelligent automation solution. Of course, you can't completely remove the human element, but it's important to determine which AP procedures you want your intelligent solution to manage for greater accuracy and efficiency. We also recommend introducing or improving PO matching. This can bring benefits like reducing data capture requirements, more efficient fraud protection or prevention, faster and simpler approval, and greater transparency in reporting and auditing. We also recommend working in the cloud if you haven't already. This supports more efficient collaboration between departments. A cloud-based solution can also deliver benefits that cancel out any security risks. So with a physical data security capabilities that are above and beyond those that you have on your corporate servers. Lastly, we recommend getting closer to your IT department. As they audit data extraction platforms from a technological perspective, your colleagues in IT should play a major role in suppressing security concerns. They can also help you choose the solution that best helps your company achieve its business objectives.
Finally, an ideal cognitive data capture solution has faster setup speeds, an intuitive interface for correcting the extracted data, a quick onboarding process that requires next to no training, a simple integration process with existing or legacy software, and a price per invoice which is 4.5 times cheaper than manual entry.
Great, so now we're going to take some of your questions. We're just going to check and see if you guys have submitted some already, but if not, we can just wait maybe like a minute and you can send your Q&As through Zoom.
And of course, if you wish to submit the questions in private, you can send those to rossum@rossum.ai. That's rossum@rossum.ai.
Okay, cool. So we have a question. Does Rossum support Arabic invoice extraction?
At the moment, no. We are open to adding additional languages as part of our supported scripts if there is a business opportunity that you feel we are a good fit for. Currently, we support any language that uses the Latin alphabet, which is, of course, English, as well as most European languages. Arabic scripts, Cyrillic, some Southeast Asian languages, Japanese, Chinese, Hindi, etc., are not supported at the moment. But this is valuable feedback that we, as our development team, specifically would love to consider.
Cool. So the next question, who does the final confirmation after the data is parsed?
We at Rossum do not employ any human validation in-house. When a Rossum license is deployed at your end and integrated with your workflows, initially the validation is done by human operators at your end. It is possible that some of our partners may offer additional services for data validation, but the default option is, of course, to do the validation in-house yourself, so you control the validation workflows. And as our AI learns on your data, the objective is, of course, to eliminate human data validation completely. Now, the next question, could you explain data extraction process, that is the flow between computer vision and the NLP techniques used? So part of this is obviously subject to what we like to call our secret sauce in the company. Perhaps this is not the best forum to go into a deep dive into how the NLP techniques are being employed and how the data, once it's read, is assigned meaning to. But if you reach out to us directly, we'd be happy to provide whatever inputs you are looking for.
Cool. Next question. Can Rossum be implemented with any ERP?
In short, yes. The rule of thumb is to look for applications that have RESTful API support. We have fairly detailed API documentation, which is accessible either directly through our website. If you go to the different links that are on the main page of our website, you can access the documentation for the API as well as a developer hub, which is very handy for implementing Rossum with whatever ERP systems you're using. Most commonly used ERPs that are prevalent in the market are, of course, supported.
Okay, great. So if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to. I think this is the end, though, of our webinar. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to email us either at webinars@rossum.ai or just rossum@rossum.ai. But we want to thank you guys for joining us today. We hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you all. Looking forward to hearing from you.